Hey, this is Stuart, and of course I'm at the beautiful Purple Valley, and it's that exciting time of year where we have Laruga back with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we've been in the Shala, and I've been missing some of these afternoon sessions, but Carolina's told me that Laruga's done some fantastic workshops on the transitions out of and into and out of some of the second series postures, as well as, of course, some other really cool workshops. So we thought we'd also be able to share with some of that idea with you as well. So we've managed to ask Laruga if she's willing to show us some of the transitions in and out of the second and what we should be focusing on, and how we can take the practice to the next level, really, because it's a lot harder work, isn't it, than just sort of flopping backwards and forwards between the postures.
Yeah, most definitely, yeah.
So we're going to let Laruga just do her thing. I'm going to sort of be to the side and just sort of interfere as usual, and but try not to too much. And so away we go. Which one are we looking at first then?
I guess maybe we should start at the beginning with Pashasana.
Nice.
Yeah, looking at the
Yeah, because
transition.
that's pretty hard, isn't it? If you want to do it without touching the floor.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So the transition out of Pashasana, when we finish the pose on both sides, it is appropriate at some part of the process to just jump back. And maybe even get a little bit of elevation. But the more traditional movement, what we're working toward is going to be to actually press into our arms and elevate our body to then jump back, which is rather difficult at first, and it takes time to build up that strength and stability. So.
And do we do that with a straight arm? Because I've been playing with that recently, and I feel I need to bend my arms, but are we aiming for eventually to do it with a straight arm?
Yeah, so in the beginning, to create elevation, we start with straight arms as we begin to press. But then as we start to move and jump back, we need to bend the arms to create space for the feet to
come
jump
through.
back. Yeah.
Great. So can you show us what that looks like?
So we'll just act as if we kind of finished our twist on the right side when we do Pashasana. And then when we prepare, what I always recommend is we want the arm, or the hands, I should say, slightly forward in relationship to the shoulder, because we're going to start to travel, and let me just step back a little bit. We're going to travel the shoulders in the direction of the fingertips. So we're creating kind of this planching action. So as we create that planching action, at the same time, we're going to be drawing the knees in toward the chest, which generates quite a bit of strength in the core. So how we create that, we want to have the fingers spread nice and wide. I'm already beginning to draw in through my lower belly before I even start. And I'm going to lean forward. And as I lean forward, I'm slowly beginning to resist my body weight. So from here, leaning, 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 drawing the knees into the chest. Then the feet elevate, arms bend, to then jump back. And then completing the Vinyasa. So another thing that I always mention with that forward lean into the shoulders, or leaning the shoulders in the direction of the fingertips, it's also very important that we lift the chin to counterbalance that weight of the forward lean. So usually my mantra with this is lean, resist, lean, resist.
Okay.
So the more body weight I give to my arms, the more I need to push against that body weight to create this sense of elevation.
And to start with, nothing happens, does it? When you first try this, it's like, my God, I must weigh like a 10-ton because my feet are just not coming off the floor.
Yeah.
So what, can we lift one off, or is there an intermediate version between just hopping up in the air and back and that?
Well, carving away at it is going to be like the best way. So it might even be a little bit rough at first. I know the first time I tried this and attempted, I was working very hard, but nothing was happening. So expect that at first when you attempt. The thing about it is the first action of just getting your feet off the ground is going to demand the most amount of energy.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of carve away at it slowly over time. Usually the easiest part, or the beginning part, is going to be the easiest, just to get the feet to elevate off. But usually where some people tend to struggle is when we start to bend the arms a bit, lean the chest forward further to then jump back. That's when it gets even a little bit heavier in the upper body.
It's funny because it may be, of course, it's going to be to do with body weight distribution and stuff like that. But I always find, for me, it's the other way around. I always find actually as soon as I start to bend my arms, then I feel strong and I can go up and back. But that initial getting off the floor, it seems like you want an old bottle jack or something.
Oh yeah, I think it kind of depends on the person. Like, what is your strong point? Because you're right. Some people find themselves to be stronger from a semi-bent position. Other people tend to find themselves stronger from a straight arm position. So what I would kind of recommend is, because again, the first part is just to get the feet off the floor. For instance, many will start like this, really working hard to like, and then all of a sudden the feet are up a little bit, and then maybe we collapse to the floor a little bit like this, and the feet come back down, the arms bend, and then we just kind of jump from there to complete the vinyasa. That's one way to work until we feel like we can get more elevation, and not feel the sense that we can't maintain the hold.
So even if you can just get come up onto your toes and just get them off a bit, it's getting it going.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to work, like bit by bit. And that's how it kind of really worked for me, is just slowly working into it. Just giving it my best shot every time I would practice Pashasana, and it really starts to come together. So
I know when I started, it was like I tried it once and I thought, oh my God, this is way too hard, I'll just forget that. And then it was like, and then I thought, no, okay, look, I've got to do this. And then actually then you surprise yourself, do you? Because it actually isn't, I mean, it is hard, but it's nowhere near as hard as you build it up in your head. And if you just decide to do it, then before you know it, you're sort of doing it.
Yes.
And so it is a psychological thing.
I really encourage students to try and just attempt. Again, if we don't try, we don't stimulate the right muscles to build up strength. And so when I started to first work any type of pressing action, even at the beginning when I was learning Utplutihi at the very end of practice, I felt like I was dead weight at first. So it's like, we have to start somewhere, and we have to just lean into our arms. And a lot of times we're going to be working very hard. Nothing's going to happen. But, that's part of the process, to just kind of keep persevering through that and just do the best you can.
Cool. Yep. And when we jump into Pashasana, are you meant to go up into a handstand and then lower down, or is it a tuck jump, or you just
jumping forward and dropping?
So nothing special. Okay.
No, not for the entry.
No. Okay. Cool. And so then after that we've got Kunchasana. Is that the next one we can look at?
Crownchasana.
Yeah.
So for Crownchasana, there's two ways that you can, if we take a look at the entry into Crownchasana, just jumping through with the right leg back and the left leg elevated when we do the right side. I can go ahead and demonstrate how to kind of create a sense of flow into that. And then also when we exit out, there's also two approaches. So it's always going to be, there's always going to be one that's going to be maybe kind of hard, and one that's going to be very challenging, or a little bit more challenging. I don't know. It depends on, what part of the process you're working in. So if I just demonstrate the most simple way to jump into Crownchasana, I'm going to jump through. And then what I recommend, as you can see, my leg stays elevated, and I use the strength of my core to lift the leg. Now that's something to work toward. Back, and then exhale, folding in. So I challenge students I'm jumping in rather low, but as you jump in, try to use your lower belly strength to keep your leg elevated, and then catch it like so. Of course, at first, when we first learn, or if we're a little bit tight in the leg, it might be a little bit like this, and then like this, which is okay. That's an absolutely okay way to get into the pose. But if you're looking to kind of evolve the way that you're transitioning, this is one way to start to one thing to start to practice.
So use it, and it goes for lots of things, doesn't it? Using your own strength to move the body part, and don't grab it too quick. But obviously you got to be rather open in your hamstrings here, and strong in the lower belly. I mean, that looks incredibly easy when you do it like that, but it's like, I know what it feels like. Okay, cool. So you're in. And did you say there was another way of jumping in too?
So another way would be just creating maybe a little bit more elevation. So how you would do that And we're still going to do the same thing where we keep the straight leg elevated, but just jumping up maybe a little bit higher, coming in, just like so. Kind of the same thing.
But with a bit more height.
Yeah, just a little bit more height. And coming into the arms to then gently lowering yourself into the position, taking the leg through.
And this is a personal question, sorry about this, guys. But with, I always get confused when I've got to do one thing with one leg and one with another. It's just like, no, what's up? Is that quite common, or am I an oddity? And if so, what can you do about it?
You mean with the one leg bent?
Any time I've got to do something, so if I'm jumping through with both legs doing the same thing, basically crossing, that's fine. But if I have to jump one leg around and my arm and one through the middle, or like that, where I've got to fold one back and push one up, then it's like, nothing happens.
No, well, yeah, it can feel rather tricky at first. That's why it's good in primary series to start to practice jumping into this or Tiranga Mukai Pada Paschimottanasana.
Yeah, same move.
Yeah. So when we first approach jumping in, what I think about is I really want to shoot, since I'm doing right side, that means left leg will be straight, right leg bent. When I prepare to jump, I really want to get the straight leg forward first. And then the back leg kind of drags behind.
Okay.
So it's like my priority is really to shoot that straight leg forward, and the back leg is kind of, it's coming in a little, like a beat later to then lower, and I'm bending it back, obviously, like so. But then when we go into Kranchasana versus Tiranga Mukai Pada Paschimottanasana, obviously I then go up
and raise the leg more.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So then when we're in it, then we've done it, then we're coming out.
Yeah, so the most simplest way, so after I do the position and I take the head back, exhale, the simplest way to come out is just to take the shin bone across like so, and then I'm going to press the top of the foot down into the floor and just elevate my hips over my arms. So this is going to be like this, and just jump back like so. So that's kind of the easiest way to come out of the position. So if I just do that one more time, I'll do it a little bit more swiftly because it was kind of a little bit rough there. So inhale, head
We
back.
didn't notice.
Exhale, and then just like so.
Cool. So you're using the power of the bent leg to flip your bum in the air.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Just get over the arms. But if you want a little bit more challenge and you want to work your upper body strength a bit more, then we can press our body weight. So I just bring my hands forward in relationship to my hips and my shoulders, and I'm just going to lean into my arms, lift, and then jump back like so. So that's another way to do the jump back from more of a pressing action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tremendously difficult, isn't it? I think it's easy enough to do this press where your legs are sort of straight and you lift it up, but as soon as you've got one leg bent, to try and keep that closed so it doesn't stay on the floor is like crazy hard. So what are you thinking in order to keep that leg up and against your bum?
Well, one thing that I will say is any variation to the jump back when you're pressing through, really the priority should always be to learn how to do a regular jump back.
Right, first.
So I have found that to be true as once my regular jump back was pretty solid, doing variations came a little bit more naturally. Yeah. And they did feel more challenging, at least from my experience, than the regular jump back. So usually I kind of recommend for students to put priority over the regular jump back and then start to work variations. That's kind of, doesn't mean that you can't necessarily try and play around with it, but I have found it to be, it's like a natural progression. Yeah.
So get the basics in place first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've done Kranchasana, and then we got a few which are relatively straightforward as far as jumping in, haven't we? So what is the next one? Is it Ustrasana that we meet the next challenge?
With the kneeling back bends, it's pretty simple transitioning going into the poses. So jumping to kneeling, taking the knees hip width apart, doing the pose. But where we can work is after we do the pose, the movement that we're working toward is again another press. Now that again is quite challenging at first, not always the easiest thing to start off with if you're new to doing some of this work. So you can always jump. And you can always jump with a little bit of elevation. But I always encourage students when that becomes quite easy and when the strength starts to build, to then challenge yourself to press. Okay, so we can kind of cover that. And that's going to be true for Ustrasana, Laga Vajrasana, and also Kapotasana.
And jumping in, I mean, is it just a jump forward and plonk on the floor? Or are you trying to slow the whole thing down and like land like you're on a airbed, or are you just jumping forwards?
Actually, it's not the requirement, but it's something that I do in my own practice. Like just trying to work into my upper body more, and it's something that I would also recommend students to, just to challenge themselves a little bit to work more into their strength. The lighter you land, the more strength it activates actually over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we see that as you're, sorry,
Yeah.
get you working. Can we see, as you're coming here anyway, we might as well get to see you jump in.
So just jumping in, tucking a bit to land lightly as possible. Just nice and easy, like so. So, for instance, I'll just go ahead and do Ustrasana. So hands at the waist, inhale, exhale. Just coming into the pose. And then when we do the transition out, inhale up, exhale. The easiest thing to do will just be bringing the hands down, leaning over the arms and jumping by pressing the shin bone and the top of the feet down into the floor and jumping back. So still a challenging transition, but easier than the press. So oftentimes, depending on where a student is in their strength and their development of strength, that's going to be an option to start with. And then when students get a bit stronger or practitioners get a bit stronger, then I recommend to really work with the pressing action.
And you were just trying to like pause in a tuck handstand there before you shoot the legs back?
It's just like a split second of elevation. Yeah.
Nice, cool.
Which is kind of nice. In a way, it helps to kind of reset the back a bit. But it's not necessarily that we're trying to hold a handstand. It's more just elevation and tuck, and then
out again.
Yeah, jumping back.
And so then the press from that, then how does that differ from the press from Pashasana? I suppose we're pressing from our knees, which is going to be harder.
So the principles are going to be very similar, but the entryway or the gateway different since we're on the knees.
On the knees.
So when we press out of the kneeling back bends, hands to the floor, fingers spread wide, hands slightly forward in relationship to the shoulders so we can get that leaning action. So again, we need some movement happening, getting the shoulders to move in the direction of the fingertips. As I move the shoulders in the direction of the fingertips and give weight to my arms, I then resist my body weight as I start to bring the knees into the chest. Bringing the knees into the chest in that way creates a fair amount of strength in the core region. And then obviously leaning into the arms, that takes a bit of upper body and upper back strength. What I usually tell students who are kind of a little bit intimidated by these strength-based moves is that one, the first step is really giving weight to your arms. You have to give weight to your arms. So that's like the first step. Because what happens is as soon as you give weight to your arms, the muscles stimulate naturally. They just turn on. But where that extra layer of strength comes in is resisting the body weight.
Right.
So if students can just at first, or practitioners at first can just lean into their arms, even if they feel like not much is happening, that's, over time that sets the stage to just wake up these muscles that are laying dormant, in our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times they're just sleeping.
Yeah, because we don't do a lot of weight bearing with our arms unless we are doing something like yoga and that sort of thing, do we? So yeah, they can be, as you say, dormant.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
So how we do this, when we come out of the pose, we exhale, bring the hands at the waist, then hands slightly forward, in relationship to my shoulders, fingers spread wide. I want to keep my head elevated. I'm going to lean the shoulders in the direction of my fingertips, resist the body weight, and then start to drag my knees into the chest and bend the arms to then jump back.
Looks tough. Carolina's off camera in case you're wondering who I'm making faces to. And we're both going, oh my God, how do you do that?
But I will say that sometimes it's much more challenging when you're in the deep, deep back bend because obviously
You come one way
yeah, and then you're going the
other.
other. So I feel a little bit more nimble because I'm not going so deep, but it can be challenging because all of a sudden you're putting the spine into a flexed state. So.
But is that, the idea of that is maybe like the same as doing Bakasana after all those deep back bends, that you've then got that flexion which helps release the back after all the back bending.
Yeah.
And so maybe doing this, is that the same idea, is that it's helping to release you between each of the back bends?
It definitely does that. Yeah, it definitely does that. Whether you're doing the press or even kind of jumping
Even the
a bit.
hop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So that, not that I want to get you to do it again and again, but the dragging of the legs forward. So they stay on the floor until, because to start with your knees are behind you and it's just, you can't lift them up from there, you're just in the wrong levering position.
Yeah.
So they've got to come forward, haven't they? So you sort of keep your toes on the floor until they're roughly towards where they need to be, and then you lift up from there.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I tend to approach it. There might be other practitioners that approach it a little bit differently. Maybe their strength is a bit different, but I'm all about creating leverage.
Yeah.
You know, so as I lean, then there is a time when my feet are dragging, but then I continue to follow through with the knees coming into my chest, and then really feeling a sense that my heels are moving toward my bottom.
Nice.
You know, so there is a moment where I'm dragging the feet. Now, there might be somebody that has, you know, even another extra layer of strength. They might not need that much movement. I don't know.
And then they can go up from there.
Yeah. But I really try to kind of feel the physics of these actions too. So yes, you know, I've been able over the years to generate a certain amount of strength, but also it's about kind of working smart. You know, if I lean my body weight this way, how can I get a little bit more leverage? These types of things.
And is it sufficient just to keep trying this in every practice, or I know some people do also for the jump backs themselves, the normal straightforward jump backs, that sort of tucked lift and hold sort of position. Is that, it seems like you're transitioning through that same sort of position in this. So would that be good homework to do? Yeah,
most definitely. I think one thing that I challenge practitioners with is that just, you know, trying to make it work, you know, because for all of us, when we've learned new things, it is rough in the beginning, and then it starts to come together through practice and repetition. So we have to actually do or attempt to do the poses to stimulate the muscles that support the action of doing it.
Yeah.
You know, like, because a lot of times people say, oh, well, if I do this exercise or that exercise, will it help me? Sure. Maybe a little bit, but doing it will...
You've got to do it as well, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so if they're wondering what that position was, can you just show us that tucked lift?
Yeah, I can just go through it again.
Yeah.
So, again, it's like a lean resist. So as I lean my body weight into my arms, the arms are stimulating, and then I'm giving more weight as I lean, but at the same time, dragging my knees toward my chest. Chin up as I jump back. It's really important that we keep the chin lifted to counterbalance that weight, especially when we semi-bend the knee, or the elbows, I should say. I see a lot of times when people first try to attempt this, they're working really hard, which I appreciate, but then their head is like this, and they're like, oh, like that, and it's just like, it makes it very heavy.
Yeah. Okay, so keep the head up. And gaze point then for these transitions, is it sort of here, or is it more further ahead?
I would say just slightly forward.
Just slightly forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like lifting the chin, just to kind of hold the weight of the head.
Cool.
And when the head lifts, the chest follows too. So the chest doesn't collapse either. Yeah. And that's an important part of the shoulder staying back. And then you can utilize more of your upper back muscles. So if you're kind of like this.
You're collapsed.
Yeah.
Nothing to press out of.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, cool. And so, okay, so we're going to be doing that after each one of the back bends, these transitioning back bends, because they're relatively, the finishing position is near enough the same, isn't it? Okay, and so from there we're going to anything special with Bakasana? Well, Bakasana we're jumping in and out of anyway, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so we're sort of quite used to that, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing people have a big trouble with is the jumping into Bakasana.
Yeah, that's true. That's a daunting one.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So can you give us a few tips on that one?
Yeah. So what I recommend for practitioners that are first attempting Bakasana B is to start very low. Right. So sometimes I joke you kind of want to act like you're a frog getting ready to jump. You know, frogs are very low to the ground. So and then at the same time, when you're bending down quite low, looking forward at your target. So I find that to be quite important. When the head is lifted too, when we jump, it slows down the forward momentum. So if we drop our head, it tends to not work as efficiently as if the head and chest were lifted. So it might not be the most elegant way to jump, but it gets the job done when you're first learning. So I always recommend the sense of coming down really low, like this. This is how I first learned how to jump because it feels quite scary, and I'm thinking more forward than up. Yeah, but I always tell people that when you're jumping, the feet must leave the ground because I catch people all the time where the feet stay dragging on the floor, and that doesn't count.
It doesn't count as a jump. No.
So as we prepare, just coming down really low, looking forward, and then springing forward. And then catching the outside of the arms instead. And then from here, hopping back. So when we catch the knees to the outside of the arms, it's just more manageable at first when we're a little bit kind of intimidated or by this pose.
Yeah.
Then later, as we get stronger and more confident, then we can go up maybe a little bit higher and then just land in the middle part of the arm.
Yeah. That takes a bit more control, particularly if you're sweaty as well, doesn't it? Because the knee can slip off the arm if you haven't got enough uplift. Yeah, so how I did kind of what I would say is the initial stage of jumping into Bakasana B, in a sense, I'm kind of latching on to the outer edge of my arms and kind of resting on the arms a bit. Yeah. It doesn't feel like a resting pose necessarily. It still takes quite a bit of strength. But when we take it to the next level, jumping a little bit higher and really landing on the arm, that's when it comes in more into the core and how we kind of can hold and stay elevated in the position. And from that position, there's not meant to be too much weight on the arms, is there? They're meant to be almost just touching. Yes. And so how high have you got your bum when you're doing that? Because the higher the bum, in a way, the easier it is, I think, because you've got more weight over the front, whereas the lower the bum, you have to shift more into the wrists and more across to the front. Yeah, that's true. So do we have an ideal position? Yeah, like sometimes it kind of seems to vary, from practitioner to practitioner or even teacher to teacher, how they kind of see this. I always find that it's good to know this type of more forward action. It's good to know how to do that. But from my perspective, I think I'm always about like, okay, what's the next step, or how can I challenge, more cultivation of strength, I guess I should say. So the sense of jumping up a little bit higher and trying to lower down super, super slow to landly, come onto the arms. Yeah. It just, to me, created another layer of like coordination and strength that I find is just kind of like the next progression. Yeah. Not necessarily a requirement, because again, it gets the job done if you just kind of jump. Right. But if you want a bit of a challenge, that's something that I would recommend. And they always come back, don't they? The work you put in now in these things, you find that actually you need it later on. And so if you haven't done it, and you just sort of scampered through now, then you haven't got it for later. So you're going to have to do the work sooner or later, so might as well sort of do it now. Oh, yeah, and I think in a way,
even in primary, early stages of intermediate, if you maximize everything, you'll be happy that you did, you know, like really, I like to say like we're squeezing the juice out of every pose in the transitions, in the poses themselves.
Yeah.
It helps to support everything that we do, in the future.
Nice. Can you just show us the slow version in, so as we
Yeah.
can see what we're working to eventually?
So when I jump in this way, what I do is once I jump, I want to bring my feet together as soon as possible so I can kind of control the movement better. So I'm going to jump. Let me do that again.
One refusal. It's like a horse in a horse race.
Coming into the armpits, and then jump back.
Yeah, nice. So you have to find that tuck handstand, don't you, in order to be able to then control it down at will,
Yeah.
rather than just gravity is like I'm coming down and that, like, all I can do is slow it down.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's just very interesting, kind of lowering on slow and then coming into the armpits, and essentially you are holding upper body and core. There's no resting there. So I find that to be an interesting way to work. Of course, sometimes I'll jump forward just in this more low stance, but I like the variety sometimes, you know, like just to challenge myself in different ways.
Nice. So that is quite a big challenge for people, is getting the jump, and then we've gone past that, and so what is our next transition of note that is worth looking at?
Well, if we look at the twisting poses for Bhavadranasana and also Ardha Matsyendrasana, again, when we come out of the poses, we can press, or out of Ardha Matsyendrasana, kind of get a little bit more of a lift. So in both of these poses, you can always use the option of just coming out and crossing the legs and jumping back. But if you want to challenge yourself in a different way, you can work, I find a little bit more efficiently within the action of the pose. It kind of flows a little bit better. There's a few things that you can try with these two poses.
Cool.
So
More work.
yeah.
I thought there were a couple of coasting poses. It's like, get your energy back.
Okay. So for Bhavadranasana, I'm sliding here. We do the pose. So when we come out, one way to exit would be to release, and what I do is I draw the knees together. So I try to get as compact as possible. So essentially, I'm trying to get everything to work to the midline of my body, so it feels a little bit lighter. And then hands down, and I'm going to press out of this. So same thing that I keep mentioning, shoulders moving over in the direction of the fingertips, drawing the legs into the body to then jump back. So that's one way, or a more challenging way to work on the strength in this particular transition. You can always kind of do the same thing. I guess we could have started with the easier option.
Oh yes.
But coming out of it, you can kind of do something like this as well.
So that's the one we met in Triangmukha.
Yeah.
Pressing with the top of the foot. Okay, nice.
And that works too, because just creates kind of this, it's kind of fun, you know, you just create this uplifting energy, you know. When
And it's all a bit neater, isn't it, than untangling yourself and then away we go. Yeah. Okay, so that was really nice. Yeah.
So, and then for Ardha Matsyendrasana, so for this twisting pose, after we complete the position, releasing, stacking the knees, like so, hands down. And what I'll do first, I'll do the jump first. You can jump. So what I'm doing there is, when my feet are on the floor, I'm kind of pressing down from that position to get a bit of leverage to jump up.
Yeah.
But you can always do a bit of a pressing action too, drawing the knees into the chest, And jumping back.
Yep.
Pressing is many times is not always as dynamic, but demands much more work.
It's a lot harder work, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like crazy. It's just crazy work. I know when I first tried one, it was like, you couldn't believe that I couldn't do it, really, I suppose. And it's just like, it's so much, it doesn't, in ways it doesn't seem as much fun to start with because you haven't got the height and the lift and that sort of thing. But actually, when you start doing it, then eventually the pleasure comes, I think. It's like, once you've nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of lower to the ground, you know? It's like when you do more the presses. Yeah.
But it takes a lot more effort and control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're no longer now resting postures after nasty back bends. They're now working postures. Okay, so we've got those, and then we're coming into Ekapada, Dvipada. Well, they sort of have their standard transition in with the jumping around and the jumping out.
Yeah.
But it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, because, well, for Ekapada Shirshasana, when we approach the leg behind the head pose, we want to be in the ready position. So when we jump through, we want the leg to hook around the arm to be ready to take it behind. So at first it seems kind of tricky, but it's kind of the same thing that I mentioned in Tiranga Mukhaya Padapashimottanasana. We want to take the extended leg forward as quickly as possible, and the second leg just dragging a beat behind to then wrap around. So instead of course, folding back like we do in Tiranga, it just coming around the arm.
Outside.
Okay, so if I just jump through in this position, so just being like so.
And you keep it up.
Yeah, to be in the ready position. And then when we exit out of Ekapada Shirshasana, this is where it could be a bit challenging. I find that to get leverage in the jump back in Ekapada Shirshasana, you have to work a little bit with momentum and get your timing correct. So let me go into the position first, and then we can kind of take a look at that. So of course, when we do the pose, we come forward, 5 breaths, and then coming out. So we bring the hands down, the leg has to elevate all the way up, so hands down. So when I do the transition, the most important thing is to get off the floor first and then to swing up. Sometimes where practitioners go a little bit wrong, they go into the lift of the leg too soon.
So their butt's still on the floor?
Yeah, or not very high.
Okay.
You know, so it's really important to first get up and then leg up, and then I take the leg out to then jump behind. So I kind of use the leg behind the head, I let it kind of whip out in a controlled way to create momentum.
For the energy to bring you back and through.
Yeah. And then in that really split second, then I'm prepared to get my chest forward, but I also lift my head up so I can really access my upper back muscles, keeping the shoulders back.
Yeah. And with all of these that we've seen, we're jumping back basically into a chaturanga. There can be a tendency, initially to start with anyway, is to land a bit too collapsed and a bit too low.
Yeah.
So we're aiming to land with all of them really, with 4 upper arms parallel to the ground, roughly, relatively high, or we just have to accept it's going to be low.
Yeah, so the thing is if you want to land higher with a little bit more elevation and not collapse, this is where you always have to think resist your body weight. And that's something that's been embedded in me, not always do I feel like super light, some days you feel super heavy, but it's something that I've really trained myself to do, to always resist the body weight in the opposite direction and do my best not to create a habit of collapsing.
Yeah.
And it's something that we have to, and it's in every strength-based move. We have to resist the body weight, to create that lightness.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so then when we're doing, so Dvipada is
Mhm.
going to be, is there a special transition out of that? So when we're jumping, we jump both legs around to start with.
Right. We jump both legs around to set up for Dvipada. But when we come out of it, it's going to be essentially the same thing that we do, like in primary, out of Bhujapadasana,
Yeah.
Supta Karmasana, where we come in, we extend the legs to then bring them back into Bakasana and then jump back.
Cool. So we can draw on that same jumping that we've been working in, as we said, with Bhujapadasana and Kurmasana.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just go over what allows us to land lightly in those?
Yeah.
Because then we can revisit it now here.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be, when it happens a lot, it's just like everything's quite low and it's just like, and there's no way that the legs are going to land on the arms.
Yeah.
And so how do we get that, again, that lightness? What do we need to find to...
It's really about like just stacking the bones just for a split second correctly. So I try to get the shoulders over the hands and get the hips. They might not be perfectly over, but getting them over the arms much more than, you need to get them stacked in that direction, at least a little bit more to find that sense of elevation. Because again, when you give weight to your arms, you have something to push against. That's the key to everything. If you don't, you can't get that elevation. So sometimes people, when they see this work, of course it does take some level of strength, but people are like, wow, you're so strong. But then I'm also kind of thinking, you don't realize how light it feels when the bones stack for that moment. But the hardest part is to resist the weight going down, to just, that's where the strength kind of kicks in.
Right.
To then lower yourself down softly. Yep. So we do this, just kind of. So I'm keeping my bottom up quite high.
Yeah.
And this would be my ready position for Dewey.
Yeah.
And then preparing to bring the legs behind.
To bring the legs behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then when we're coming out of that, we get, again, as you said, that same opportunity to do that transition from Titibhasana to Bakasana to jump back.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a common problem that crops up there, which is not letting the legs drop down the arms when we transition from Titibhasana to Bakasana.
Yeah,
So which happens with a lot. And then once the legs are down on the arms, you can't really jump off of them.
Yeah.
So how do we manage that? How do we keep everything high up on the arms as we bring the legs back?
So again, it's going to be about, so when we work that particular transition, it's really going to be about leaning over the arms. And as the chest lowers down, and I can demonstrate this as well, but as the chest lowers down, I'm elevating the tailbone up and creating that sense of stacking. So we have to get, since my center of gravity is down here, I need to get that away from the floor as much as possible and over my arms as much as possible. Then again, I have something to push against. When my tailbone is up quite high, then there's more clearance for my feet
To come through.
They're not going to drag close to the floor. Of course, even from separating the legs to bringing them back, I'm also actively squeezing my legs toward the center line of my body, and that's much lighter. So I squeeze the thighs in, or specifically really the knees too, and then I work the feet back. I really try to keep my body weight over my arms, so again, I can push against my body weight, and then from there, jumping back.
And how long do you keep your legs straight for? Because it is possible, sort of, if you get enough lift with the bum, to bring them back straight almost and then fold them back. Or is it advantageous to fold them a bit sooner?
Well, what I find is if I keep my legs straighter a little bit longer, I find that I have more leverage to work with.
Okay.
So it's like I really keep the leg really toned and strong. So it's like I'm not breaking that line of energy. I get more leverage. And then at a certain point, obviously, you need to kind of bend them to take them back.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. So if we just kind of complete this particular transition. So when we do Dvipada, it's going to be 5 breaths here, and then 5 breaths lifted. So when I prepare for the transition, I like to work rather swiftly. I really let both legs go out at the same time, and then I stay straight as long as I can.
Yeah.
Squeeze the knees. Really keep my weight over my arms, head up, to then jump back. So I'm always working with this sense of just stacking as much as I can. It's so much lighter, right? But that sense of like releasing the legs and then keeping the legs straight for as long as I can.
Yeah, we could really see that because your bum was sort of up here and the legs were still straight, and then you folded them in, which meant it looked much easier to keep the knees in the right position because they're not jammed everything on the side of your arm or freed up the legs.
And also it's like you really want to stay as high on the upper arms as possible. It's just so much lighter.
Yeah.
As soon as we start to sink lower on the arm, it's a struggle.
So that's coming from a bit of a squeezing in with the thighs you were mentioning, and then of course the drawing up of the abdomen. Okay,
and it's kind of, and I guess part of, it's something that I guess I really hadn't thought too deeply on, but you know, it's like the more I kind of stay in that straight body line with the legs, it's just like this teeter-tottering, you know, and then it's just easier to work. So I just really work with toning the legs, and it's just like the arms are kind of the fulcrum, and I'm like boink, you know, and then
I'm free to go.
Cool. Yes.
Good. So if people are, because I see it all the time, people are getting that idea where the arms are the legs are landing up somewhere down here. It's like super hard. It is possible to pull yourself back up your legs, which is obviously preferable than to just jump onto the floor. But it's tremendous hard work to get up there. So what actions can they be thinking of? So many people are going to be in that bit where they're getting their legs back, but they're stuck on their arms. They're coming down too low. What have they got to think in their heads?
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to be repeating myself a lot. It's lean into your arms and
your
push
arms.
against your body weight.
Cool.
Because I kind of think of it, when I give weight to my arms, I have fuel to work with.
Right.
That's how I think of it. So if I'm centered off my arms can't work. They have nothing to push against.
Yeah.
So if I work that, it's again about giving weight to my arms, but also stacking. So if we feel we're sinking, what I recommend is, you know, if you have the tenacity for it, lean forward into your arms. Again, lift your chin up so it doesn't collapse forward.
Yeah.
And then push against that body weight. And it, you know, I'm not saying a miracle will happen your first attempt, but over time you're going to train yourself to push against that body weight and stack the body over the arms. When we stack the body over the arms, we have something to work with.
Yeah. Nice. Perfect. Okay, so we've done the foot behind head stuff, sort of, because out of Yogani Drasana, it's a Chakrasana, is that right?
Yeah.
And so then we're into Titibhasana, and so there we're jumping up and bringing our legs around. So does that differ at all from, obviously we're not landing on our arms, but is it the same process as we're doing for Bhujapadasana and
for Titibhasana we want to jump into it.
Oh, we want to jump into it, don't we? Of course.
Yeah, we do. So that's what we're working toward, is jumping straight into the position. Yeah. So, of course, you can load it up down below, but over time, it is, for this pose, we need to really work jumping into. Again, that's why it's good when you're ready to start challenging yourself to jump into, like you said, Bhujapadasana and also into Kurmasana to practice
getting that up and round.
Yeah. Now the thing about jumping into Titibhasana is that when we first start learning how to do it, it doesn't feel as secure as loading up down below. Like it just doesn't. But that's where I really just challenge practitioners to make it work.
Okay.
When you stay committed to making it work, then you start to fix it through the repetition of days and days or weeks and months of practice. because that's how it was for me when I changed from loading it up to jumping into. I didn't like that because I wasn't jumping up so high. I
No,
didn't
so
like
you're
how
lower
it felt.
down, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel so nice at first.
And so you're going to just have to accept the fact that you're going to crash a few times, because to get the legs right, then you feel vulnerable to falling back on your bum, don't you?
Yeah. So, yeah, this is why when I will demonstrate this. What I tend to do, I kind of come into, when I jump, I come into it a bit relaxed. So my knees will be semi-bent and my arms will be semi-bent to kind of get more access to the upper arms. And then once I land, I will squeeze the thighs into the upper arms, and then I'll start to straighten everything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I get the landing. If I went straight with everything right away, I wouldn't be able to land as high.
On the arms.
Yeah.
Nice.
So when we prepare, it's really good to look forward. So do you see I was quite bent?
Yes.
The arms and the legs, and then right away, I just straighten everything and engage. And then after 5 breaths here, lifting and coming into the first part of Tittibhasana.
Yeah.
So I have found from experience, when I have both the arms and the legs semi-bent, I can just get a little bit higher, and then I just go into the full.
And then you're going from there. Yeah, and it looks super controlled.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that would be kind of my recommendation with that one.
Nice. And then coming out, we're coming out into Tittibhasana really again, aren't we?
Yes.
And then transitioning that same Bakasana jump back.
Yeah, so when we go into the bind, then we're walking forward, walking back, then bringing the heels together, wrapping the arms around. But then we go back into the fly or Tittibhasana, and then Bakasana, jumping back.
Yeah.
So that transition of Bakasana jumping back is something we do quite a bit.
You're going to visit a lot, so it's worth sort of trying to get onto it.
Yeah.
And so the Tittibhasana, is it always bum down like that and legs super high, or can it be everything level?
The way that I've been taught is feet high, tailbone low.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess that the style of it being even like this is like a kind of a different approach. Or
okay. So it's always going to be like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Cool. Okay. So we're up to Tittibhasana, and then from there we've got Pincha and Karandavasana.
Yeah.
So we can. It would be brilliant if you could show us the proper transition out of Pincha.
Yeah.
Or even the proper lift into it, because I'm afraid I'm a kick up into Pincha. It seems like a press up is not going to happen. But again, it's a matter of, like you said, stacking, which needs your freedom in the shoulders in order to stack the hips over the arms to make the feet light. And it's like coming back to a headstand, really, isn't it? The same feeling of the heavy legs on the floor, or not, depending how you get in.
Yeah.
So that would be brilliant if you could show us the options of getting in and out of Pincha.
So with Pincha Mayurasana, kicking up with one leg is an absolutely appropriate way to get into it. So, and that's usually how we all start in Pincha. So I always start off with, even that's how I learned. So, and even when I teach practitioners how to do, I always have them kick up with one leg. And then what I usually recommend is when the one leg kick is quite consistent, then I recommend kicking up with the less dominant leg. So usually the leg that we start with is our dominant leg, and then switching it up, kicking up with the less dominant leg, gives us more confidence to know that we can control it.
Yeah.
So I like that progression. It's something that I work towards. And I don't know where I came up with this, because no one really told me to do this. I just felt like I intuitively started to understand, especially to be prepared for Karandavasana, I need to have a Pincha so solid that no matter how I jump into it or enter into it, that I know I can hit it, because I need that type of body control to be able to work into Karandavasana.
And then start moving legs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So dominant leg, getting comfortable with that, with what's easy, then less dominant leg, then jumping into it would be something to start to try. Because whenever we jump into it, it feels a little bit more intimidating, because there's this kind of space of entering into the unknown. It's like, it's kind of a kick and a prayer. We're like, what's going to happen? But we get used to it with practice. So that would be the next
I hadn't
progression.
thought of that. Yeah, I just thought kicking, okay, then pressing. But yeah, so the
So
jump.
jumping, yeah,
Okay.
that would be a little bit easier than pressing.
Yes.
Then pressing.
Yes.
Yeah. Or, if you want to press right away, you can press. But if you just
I'm
want
going
to
to need
start
a few
there.
more reincarnations before I'm ever going to be able to do that. Okay, so let's see it.
So, of course.
Did you realize you were going to get absolutely
I know.
wrecked by the time you'd done all this?
So when we prepare for pinch, getting a grip with the forearms is a good place to start. So usually how I recommend that is fingers spread wide, and how I create a grip is that I draw my elbows in more narrow, and then I just move outward and let the skin of my forearm catch onto the mat. So if we first learn how to kick, it's important to make sure that the driving leg that goes up is super active, nice and straight. I also want to keep my chin lifted so the shoulders stay on the back. No dropping of the head. And inhale, kick. Oops. And then making sure that my legs are active, the toes pointed. And breathing here. When I prepare to jump out of it, a slight arch to the back, but I want to keep my legs straight, and then kind of scoop my body to come into chaturanga.
Nice.
Yeah. So sometimes I find, people, there's some fear going into pincha, but I also find that there seems to be a lot of, it depends on the person, a little bit of intimidation with the jumping out of it as well.
Yeah, it's easy to be I must admit I let that go a good few years ago, and I really don't know why, and I just don't do it anymore, because it's just and it's not so difficult, is it? It's
No.
like, but it's like you're getting tired up there and you're thinking, oh god, another bloody transition. It's like I could just land on my face. But it's so again it's about putting the work in, isn't it, really? So, and it's really just a flick.
Yeah. So in a way, like, it's like I try not to whip the legs, because that can be quite sloppy and a little bit uncontrolled.
Okay, cool.
So trying to keep the legs as straight as possible, but going into a slight arch, inhale, and then exhale, kind of coming into this more scooping
more work
action.
from here. Nice. Yeah.
Like so.
Yeah. Cool.
So I can do one more time. I'll jump
Nice.
into pincha and then jump out.
And the positioning you're getting before you do all these transitions was the shoulder over the elbow. Yeah, because sometimes I see people with their shoulders are way forwards of the elbow, and then they're weak because they've got to press themselves back to where they were before they once they're up. So it looked like you were readying yourself with that sort of alignment. Was that going through your mind, or was I imagining it?
I think now it's become, maybe I'm not so conscious of it, but it's just like something that I know that works.
Okay.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's, again, also with the legs with pincha, it's so important that we learn to tone the legs, activate the legs and point the toes. One reason why I'm always on students or practitioners of Ashtanga Yoga to, when you're in your inversions, headstand, shoulder stand, legs active, toes pointed. So when you start to go into other inversions, legs active, toes pointed, it's a natural thing.
It's there already.
Yeah, you don't have to kind of like, what do I do now? Like, it's just like, that's what you need to do.
Cool.
So it's super important with kind of feeling where your body is in space. Okay. I hope this works out. So preparing, keeping the head up, and then preparing to jump. So what's most important here is that the hips ride over the shoulders, and then the legs start to rise up. Want my legs super active, toes pointed. And actually, the more active my legs, the lighter it feels to hold my body weight. And then to jump out of it, slight arch,
And contract.
scooping the body.
Nice. So that was interesting, because my expectation of what that jump was going to be like is different to what I saw. So you're jumping into an L.
Yeah.
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 And then going up from there? Because I was thinking, okay, jump, I'd be jumping into a tuck and then straightening my legs. Is that also possible?
You can
or
jump
not?
into a tuck too.
Okay.
That actually would be a little bit easier.
Easier. That's
Yeah.
why I'm always for the easy option. Obviously, it comes naturally.
So I would actually recommend, you know, if it feels kind of heavy to do straight legs, doing it with a tuck would be a good progression.
Okay.
So tucking, and then later doing with
L.
with straight legs.
Yeah.
So what I essentially am doing there is the legs will feel much lighter if I get the hips over the shoulders first,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of in that L position, and then from there,
Then
letting
you
the
compress
legs
up.
rise.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that was perfect. And so then from there we're into Counterbalance, which would be basically, it's the same sort of in and out, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because
Yeah.
you just do the stuff when you're in it.
Yes.
And
yes.
so then really the next transition would be Mayurasana.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, you know, the Vinyasa to Mayurasana is a little bit kind of, I mean, we can cover that. Sometimes there's some confusion with the proper Vinyasa there.
Yes.
But when we set up Mayurasana, you know, we're in this reverse hand position
Yeah.
and then leaning into our arms as we bend the elbows. The elbows ideally, depending on someone's proportion, going into the solar plexus area like this. So trying our best to keep the elbows together. And then as we continue to lean those shoulders forward, the head coming up, which hopefully, even though we're kind of in a rounded position, we just keeps a little bit more broadness in the shoulders, legs super active, and then the legs rising upward. In a way, what I often will tell practitioners who do this that are a little bit stumped is that it's kind of like a Shalabhasana, but we're balancing on the
On the
arms
elbows.
like this. And of course it's uncomfortable at first because we feel like something is digging into our stomach here. But that's kind of how I feel like my back muscles have to activate a bit to also get that rising up.
And when I do it, I find it hard to find the same breath that I would do in other postures because this is pressing in here.
Yeah.
Have we
yeah.
got to be thinking of expanding into the back of the rib cage, or is there something that goes through your mind when you're doing that posture, if you want to hold it for a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's oftentimes it's hard to find like that deep, long breath in this pose because also it's demanding quite a bit of energy on our
Physically,
body.
yeah.
So I do tend to experience that my breath becomes a bit more rapid, but I try my best just to consciously slow it down. You know, allow the breath to lengthen in the best way that I can. And of course, being aware of expanding it into, you know, the back regions of the body will definitely help. So,
Cool.
yeah.
All right.
So,
So yeah, let's see. We're
when
jumping.
we set this up, so we jump the feet out, coming into the reverse hand position with the head up, and then exhale the head through. Then inhale, head up, exhale, jumping back. Essentially, I'm kind of in a plank position here.
Yeah.
And then I start to lean forward, elbows drawing together, elbows bending, chin rising as I continue to lean, and legs lifting. And breathing here, legs active, toes pointed, and breathing. After 5, coming back into a upward facing position. Exhale, downward facing position, keeping the hands in this reverse placement, and then looking forward, jumping, head up, exhale, head through, and then inhale, coming up to standing and jumping to Samasthiti.
Great.
So there's a lot of things happening.
There's a lot of bits and pieces, isn't there, in
Yeah.
in the vinyasa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes there can be a little confusion with that, but that's how we approach Mayurasana.
And with I mean, we're really talking about the transitions, but just as I've got you here, I'm going to ask you this too. But the Mayurasana, should it be parallel to the ground, or should it be head down, feet up?
You know,
And if so, how?
well, sometimes my teacher has kind of he doesn't like when I go too high.
Okay.
So actually, I shouldn't be like, whoa, like he
No.
actually told me to like I think one time he said it looks like a mountain. No, you can take it down a little bit. But being straight is enough too. Yeah, being like really straight, chest broad. With my body proportion, I'm very short up top, but quite long on the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's like I try to really get my chest to come up more, but there's still, a little bit of work that can be done there.
So, because is it hard? For me, it seems like it would be harder to be flat than to be head down, tail up. Or are you thinking it's harder to be head down, tail up?
Yeah, I just think this posture is challenging.
Okay.
No matter, the more you can get your chest up, that's going to be another area of challenge for sure.
Right.
Yeah, as your legs also rise.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So we're up to Mayurasana. What we got coming now?
Nikrasana.
Oh yeah, this one. Finally, we in a posture I can actually do like, cleanly. But we're really about transitions here rather than the postures themselves. And so, is there any way that we can enter it to be ready for the first hop that would be different to what we would be doing when we're coming into any other posture?
So when we're preparing for Nikrasana.
So is there anything that's going through your mind that you're saying, okay, well, I'm doing this, I'm not doing something else. I am in a plank and I'm getting ready to do it. But is it just a matter of just going down and then just hopping? Yeah,
so with Nikrasana, it's kind of getting this rebounding action, and it's again like feeling that you can create movement and not land and collapse. It's all about resisting the body weight and how we can help ourselves to feel at least some level of lightness, because it does start to, as we continue, it starts to feel a bit heavy. If we're not careful, is to really keep the body line straight and strong and stable. So drawing the legs together, toning the legs, the feet should be together. You want to have your chin elevated to kind of keep broadness through the chest. And with each movement forward, really resisting and doing your best not to collapse into the shoulders and into the chest. I find that going forward, at least for me personally, going forward feels so much easier than going backward. But I don't know if that's because I'm fatiguing or if it's just harder to go backwards. And also the other challenge I find for myself is just to stay very consistent from start to finish. Can I have that same level of push from the time I began to the time I end?
Nice. And it's meant to be that same tempo of the normal breath too, isn't it? It's not meant to be pop, 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 pop. It's meant to be pop, pop. The same breath that you've been using for the other stuff. Basically.
And actually the way that I've become accustomed to practicing it is like inhale, exhale, 1. And it's almost like there's a slight pause. Inhale, exhale, 1. Inhale, exhale, 2. Inhale, exhale, 3.
So you're taking the momentum out of it.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
And it's like really get into the strength where, like you were saying, where people tend to go wrong is they're going boing, 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 boing.
It's just a flippity-floppity fish, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So if we just kind of take a look at this. So I'm in my Chaturanga Dandasana position. Nice straight body line, feet together. So it's kind of like after each one, there's like a slight pause. So it's not that I'm holding my breath, but it's like a inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Really making each movement distinct and kind of separate from each one.
Yeah, and then I think makes it a lot cleaner and a lot more precise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nice, cool. Alrighty, so we're in and out of Nikrasana. And then we must be to Parikasana. So are we jumping into that differently? Are we jumping in as we would jump in with a triangle?
No, actually, in Parikasana, we're supposed to just jump through straight legs forward.
Okay.
And then we go into
So why position. The difference there? Do you know why? Because we're going to have that leg folded back, aren't we?
Yeah.
So
That's just the way it
it's
is.
just the way it is. Okay. So finally, some respite maybe. So it's okay. So just a
Yeah.
straightforward jump in, straight legs,
Yeah.
and then coming out, return to straight legs to jump back normally.
No, so actually, with Parigasana, but this actually can be quite difficult. So if I take, maybe I'll do this side so I
Uh-huh.
don't
So
have
this
to
would
like
be your
kinda-
second side.
Yeah, second side. So we're actually ideally supposed to lift from behind.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah. Not the easiest thing, because
Yeah.
sometimes I find myself like, okay, where do I put my hands to get some leverage?
And you're meant to lift it with that leg out there as it is now. Oh, wow.
Well, you can move it in a little bit
Uh-huh.
to create some space. What I tend to do, and maybe it's cheating, I don't know. It's like kind of like,
Under the leg?
yeah, kind of getting like a little bit of this, but we're supposed to come from behind and then
do
jump
it.
back. So that's what we're
Cool.
working towards,
Yeah,
is this lifting from behind.
right.
Not the easiest thing, because I always find that when my hands are slightly forward, I get much more
Yeah,
leverage.
it's the same with all these lifts, isn't it? If you place it here, it's like really hard. You place your hands there,
Yeah.
it's much easier.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the same with that. Yeah, that makes it really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's for the transition out of
Yeah,
Parigasana.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I suppose to make it easy, if you want to have a play with that, then I imagine if you bring that leg in, not all the way in, but if
Yeah.
you bring it in different amounts of the angle, should make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. And then we're into Gomukhasana.
Mm-hmm.
So we're jumping into that and landing with one leg stacked on top of the other.
No, actually
Yeah.
straight legs forward.
Straight legs again.
Yes.
So many things I do wrong.
No. So, yeah, when we do Gomukhasana, we just jump through straight legs forward, and then we begin to
Crisscross.
place the legs. We want the heels together as much as possible,
Yeah.
sitting on the heels, interlacing the fingers, and then dropping the chin, as low as possible. 5 breaths here, and then binding the hands overhead, head back. 5 breaths here. And then after 5 breaths, lifting the head, what we can do to transition out is just stay in this position and lift up from here.
So
And jump
that was
back.
our lift hop. We've met that one before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Where was that?
So, like, something that we could do out of Ardha Matsyendrasana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, where I get a bit of leverage is just pressing my feet down
Yeah.
to the floor and then just riding my hips over my arms.
Cool. So that must mean that there's also a press version of that then too.
Yeah, and you can press out of this as well, for
okay.
sure. And it would be really the same principle here. So hands down, slightly forward from the shoulders, then leaning over the hands, drawing the legs in, untangling the legs to come into Chaturanga.
Yeah, nice. So we keep getting opportunity, and that's what's going to make it that press strong, isn't it? If we keep revisiting it on all these occasions,
Yeah.
it's going to be the early ones are going to be super easy.
Yes.
Imagine by the time you get here, you're going to be fairly knackered.
Yeah.
They're going to be a little bit dodgy,
So at least
but
you have some options, like if you need to kind of
yes, come
do
out
a
of
jump.
them. Okay.
But I mean, it takes, if you're, if people are new to this, committing to the early ones and then slowly making their way deeper in is a kind of a good way to start.
Yeah.
I think challenging yourselves little by little is better because
Yeah,
it
you
doesn't
wouldn't want
feel
to press every. Now we've given you all this information. Don't go and press on every single transition unless you're ridiculously strong, because they'll just exhaust yourself,
Yeah.
won't you? And that's not what it's about, is it? It's about giving yourself the opportunity maybe to work on your strength and build stronger, not just exhaust yourself for the rest of the day and you don't feel like
Yeah.
doing anything.
I
Yeah.
agree, and I think, we don't have to put too much pressure on ourselves with this, and
Yeah.
it's like there's always other. I mean, if you need to step back,
Yeah.
that is
and
an
do it.
option, But if we want to challenge ourselves, I think adding one a week, a month,
Mm.
and it should be slow and steady as
Yes,
your strength increases.
Yeah, yeah. And so then we're into the last of the postures besides the headstands,
Yeah.
aren't we? And so when we're coming into that, again, is it a straightforward jump to seated and then we're going back and placing
Yeah.
the foot?
So let's see. We skipped
If we skipped one.
Vajrayasana.
Oh, we did. How did we miss
Yeah,
that one?
but with that, it's again with Vajrayasana. I just kind of actually let me start from the beginning so I don't
So we've jumped to
confuse
standing.
people. So with Vajrayasana, because there's quite a bit of movement in this one as well. So we kind of come into this Ardha Baddha Padma Padmatanasana position. So I come here and then both hands to the floor, dropping the head. Inhale, head up, and then exhale. Jump back. I want to keep the knee high, chaturanga. Upward facing, keeping the knee elevated. And then downward facing. Jumping the foot forward and then dropping the knee down. Ideally, we want the bottom foot turned out as much as possible. This is the tricky part, is to bring right over left and hands upward. And breathing here, 5 breaths. After 5 breaths, hands down. And we can get a bit of elevation here. Lean over the arms, up, and jump back. Keeping the leg in half lotus to then prepare for the second side.
Yeah.
So the going into it is there can be a little bit of confusion with the correct vinyasa there.
Yes.
When we come out of the left side, I guess I should kind of cover that and do the pose.
We just hop straight in. So there's always some confusion there sometimes, isn't there? Whether there should be sort of that half vinyasa or not. But from there, you just change the legs and hop in, don't you?
Mm-hmm. I'm going into the position. Whoop. And then when I come down, lean over the arms, lift,
Hop.
jump back. Downward facing, and then I'm going to jump forward to standing. Then I take the arm around, head up, and then exhale, fold in, inhale, head up, exhale, hold, inhale, stand, and then samasthiti.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
so there's quite a bit of movement as we enter into the pose and also coming out.
And even the very first thing, which always surprises me, is when you first bring the leg in and you take the bind as in Ardha Baddha, but then the moment you go to fold forward, you release it and you place both hands on the floor. So that again is, you don't go down first and then release it. And
Yeah.
So it's something to
And
think
then
about.
when we're going into the upward facing, it's really important that the knee stays up and not resting
on the floor.
on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the only other thing was your body position in the posture. Once you're in the posture,
Yeah.
are you looking to have the body parallel or facing completely forwards, or is it meant to be going in the direction of the knee or somewhere halfway in between?
Like, I like to think, because I want my, on a good day, that foot can really
Turn out to the
but
side.
not always is that kind of approachable, not on all days, depending on how I feel in the balance. But it's kind of more square to the front, but then with the arms, there's sometimes when you feel you're veering off to the side.
Yeah, exactly. That's what tends to happen. Everybody gets
Yeah.
pulled towards the knee direction,
Yeah,
doesn't it? The
yeah.
knee that's in the air.
But from my understanding, it's more kind of to the front.
So ideally,
Yeah.
you're aiming to be
Yeah.
at the front.
But
Yeah, brilliant.
the way that we're kind of turned out, there's always a bit of leaning.
It's going to pull you that way.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. And so we're really at the end, aren't we? Apart
Yeah.
from their headstands,
Yeah.
and their headstands, you're coming back always to a tripod, and then you're jumping out
So-
for a tripod.
And with headstands, one thing that we can always start to challenge ourselves with, and it's not that it's so much of a big deal, but when we approach the headstands, a lot of times we get into the habit of like coming to kneeling, going here,
Yes.
and then lifting up, which is an absolutely fine way to go into a headstand. But over time, it's good to possibly challenge yourself just to lower yourself like this, whatever hand position It is.
Yeah.
And then just go up from here.
So you're lowering yourself from the down dog.
Yes.
Nice.
And sometimes what I will do is whenever I do a vinyasa, the down dog might be a bit wide to then go straight into a headstand. So if I'm in my regular kind of downward facing position, I might just jump a little bit and then lower down.
Okay, nice.
So I can then prepare to go up.
For whatever posture. And then that transition here is a bit tricky, isn't it? So it's sort of a timing thing to get the hands back to tripod.
Yeah, so keeping the body in line as straight as possible and lowering down and doing your best not to collapse when you come into chaturanga. So I always like to resist and then lower a bit.
Land.
Not just, ugh.
Yeah,
You
so
know?
stop. So you stopped quite high and then chose when to lower down.
Yeah,
Nice.
just to establish that strength and buoyancy in the shoulder joint.
Yeah.
Not to get into the habit of just, that collapsing action. Always
Yeah.
resisting to feel lightness.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant. Thanks so much.
I'm sweating.
Yeah. This is my favorite type of interview, where I'm sort of sitting here and the guest talent is here doing all this stuff, and it's like, wow. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and thanks so much to Laruga for sharing so much really, really useful information. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Take care and have a go at all of this, but not all on the same day. Over many years, I feel. Thanks so much.